Welcome, everyone, to episode 21 of the Thundercraps podcast, where we forge through the shitstorm that was WCW Thunder. I am your host, testing your endurance and manhood, Josh Kaiser. And joining me today, a man who looks like stew, beef stew, Kyle Hoagland.
You know what? I kept thinking to myself, I didn't think there were very good ones. Although I love the beef stew one. That was a top one. Was the one you did referencing something that I would assume was a Rick Rude?
No, it was actually not. So you are correct. Of course, we are in our 21st episode of Thunder. It is June 18th, 1998, and there was not a lot of good stuff from the show. That includes the show itself, but as far as quotes, it was not very quotable. When Rick Rude came out, I got all excited. He actually cut a promo that I wasn't crazy about and wasn't very
he was being kind of serious, and he was kind of being a heel but saying nice things about people.
Yes,
it was just
right.
it was really weird.
Yeah, it was. We'll get to that shortly, but no, the quote that I was referring to was when they were referring to Fit Finley. It might have been Tenay, it may have been Shivani. I didn't write down who said it, but he was talking about Fit and says that Fit will always test your endurance and your manhood. So that's where that quote came from. But let's just jump into it, Kyle. Of course, we are 21 episodes in. It is Thunder, and it's the, I guess, the follow-up show to the Great American Bash, which, if you got a chance to see it, you'll probably be almost as disappointed in that pay-per-view as you are with Thunder, except at least Thunder you got for free, right?
This is true.
We are live from Philadelphia, though, so you got Philly. You know, when I saw this, I was like, oh, Philly, that's a big town. It's a big wrestling town. This should be a great Thunder. Boy, was I mistaken. We have the normal opening, though, when the show starts out, so it's a couple weeks in a row now, Kyle. We don't have the, the cold open. The cold, it just kind of goes right into it. They let us know, though, Kyle, Goldberg's going to be here, but, there's a big announcement coming. Macho Man Randy Savage is hurt yet again. I feel like the man is constantly walking in pain.
Anytime that guy's ever injured, it means he's on his way to a world title shot.
Right, exactly. And not to bury the lead, Kyle, but Steve Mongo McMichael makes his return to the wrestling ring. So if that right there doesn't say what kind of show we got ahead for you, then I don't know what will.
And then on top of that, we haven't even scratched the surface that there is a big hole missing in the commentary booth.
That is true. I was gonna wait a second. There
should be the top story.
All right. Well, I don't mean it. Mongo coming back is a big story, but you are correct. It's Tony Schiavone, it's Bobby Heenan, and no Lee Marshall, Kyle. Just Mike Tenay today.
I'd like to think that Staggerly is not there because he's banned from Philly for killing a guy.
Maybe Lee Marshall knew what a bad show was gonna be, and is like, I cannot be associated with this crap.
He has standards.
And I mean, normally we like to hold off to the end to let you guys know what we think about the show. But if you're going to hear it. If you've watched the 21st episode before listening to this, you know how bad of a show it is. So I'm not going to sugarcoat it. You're not going to sugarcoat it. Let's just break it down and let you know just what a terrible show it was. It opens up, Kyle, with a promo. It's your head of recruitment for the NWO Wolfpack, Lex Luger, and K-Dog, Conan, rocking that "Make America Great Again" hat.
I feel like the only reason why they got Conan and Lex Luger to be on the Wolfpack was no one else wanted to be on Thunder, so this is the Thunder squad.
This is the Thunder representation. Yeah, it very well could be, because these two are two of the biggest stars on today's show. Right? It's them and the Giant.
Yeah, I mean, are we talking about with Thunder?
Yes, I'm talking about this episode of Thunder.
Oh, this episode of Thunder. At first, I was like, yes. No, I will say yes. They are headlining tonight.
Goldberg is your main event, so I guess there is that as well. But yeah, these are your big stars. They're going to come out. Lex is going to cut just a weird promo. He's going to, Conan's going to hype everyone up with his normal,
and his MAGA hat.
Right. They show a ton of crowd shots here, Kyle, which when the lights are turned on, it's just strobing white lights. You can't fucking read anything. You can't see the crowd, and they continue to cut to the crowd. So not only is this show going to be bad, but the production quality of it is terrible as well.
Oh yeah, I agree. Did you also get how I think it was Lex has a really weird promo about how he calls out Hogan, says the only reason why you're a big star is because the fans say that you were.
Yeah,
but then goes and says that Goldberg, he's a big star because the fans say he is.
Yes, yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, he basically is cutting on Hogan here. You know, says something about if you wrestle, if you wear the right outfit, you carry a cell phone or a pager, you're not necessarily the big star you think you are. That doesn't cut it. If you like it, you love it. There's no gray area. Then he starts talking about Goldberg and how Goldberg worked to do what it is, while Hogan is sitting back in his mansion counting the money that the fans, supported him with. And then he says basically while Hogan was filming this last movie he was in, the Wolfpack formed, and says the fans decided the power lies with the red and black, not the black and white. And says you can play with your pyros and try and make us look stupid, but we're not stupid.
It just seems out of place with this whole Hogan's not even I feel like the NWO is such a blip on his radar right now. Like now that I'm on the outside looking in, this is now 20 years later. This whole thing with Rodman and Karl Malone, DDP, that's what's being pushed and put towards the front line of this upcoming pay-per-view, and yet Lex is cutting a promo that has no consequence, has no real relevance. Nothing's going to come of it. Yes, of course they are feuding, sort of, but I feel like it's still a ways away before it becomes more of a reality of them going at it, because we all know that going forward, first of all, Hogan's the world champion, is not going to be defending it for the next two pay-per-views, correct?
Right.
So, or at the very least, I don't remember the timeline, but I know that either he is the champion now, maybe he's not the champion by Sturgis. I don't remember if he still is. He might have lost it by then.
No, it's not much longer, because it's what
right.
They were talking about, that sold out show coming up at Nitro in the Dome in Atlanta, and that's
right.
The big
and that's
one, right?
that's July 6th or something like that.
So that's a couple weeks away. So no,
correct.
we got Bash at the Beach, and that's it. So. This promo didn't make any sense and doesn't go anywhere. I was just waiting for Lex to say, "Hey, Giant, I'm calling you out for a tag team match tonight. Find a partner." But
because at least Luger will have a third different partner for the week.
Right. At this point, though, Kyle, we're going to see our first sign of the night. It's going to say Goldberg's record 95-0 versus Stiff's 5-0 versus Talent. So while the crowd overall overwhelmingly is in support of Goldberg, you are seeing a few of those signs now where people realize Goldberg has barely wrestled anybody worthwhile.
Lightning Foot Jerry Flynn, okay? He earned all those victories.
There you go. At this point, we go to the commentary booth. There, to your point, Kyle, we kind of mentioned just a few seconds ago. The big announcement, it's Rodman and Hogan. They're going to be teaming up against DDP and the mailman, Karl Malone. This is where they start to talk about that Rodman was on The Tonight Show, and that led to DDP and Malone coming out. And,
because obviously they're all there just randomly.
Right. And naturally, this is going to be your main event at Bash of the Beach. The big push. This is that tag team match, which at the time I thought it was kind of stupid, and I didn't give a shit at all about it. But if you think about it now, if there was a wrestler, if the WWE right now, this past finals had, Draymond Green and somebody, I'm trying to think of somebody, and Seth Rollins wrestling Roman Reigns and J.R. Smith or something, I think that would have been kind of entertaining, right?
It would be entertaining, although I don't think I would put J.R. Smith on the same page as Rodman.
Well, no, but I mean, you in theory, LeBron would be the guy, but I guess just from like Tristan Thompson, him.
Sure.
Him and Draymond having that feud, that heat, would be a little bit. But just, it's crazy to think that two people who are opponents in the NBA Finals are now going to be wrestling each other in a ring. It's a cool concept.
This is true.
So, at this point, we get our, first replay of the night. It's from this past Monday on Nitro, where we've got a cage match, which took place between Diamond Dallas Page, and the Macho Man Randy Savage, of course, Macho Man representing the Wolfpack, and DDP representing the man that the Wolfpack was trying to get to join them.
Exactly.
So
what?
Why not throw them in a cage match together?
They even said something like they were culminating a feud. It's like, what?
So I couldn't understand this. I have not watched Nitro, as we typically don't do, but I had to do some quick research, and I found somebody's notes. I don't have it in front of me who wrote the notes, but they had the notes on Nitro. And apparently what happened is Savage basically challenged DDP and said, if you beat me, there's still an offer for you to be in the Wolfpack, which doesn't make any sense at all.
That is some gang shit though, right there.
Naturally, though, the NWO Hollywood raises the cage up. In comes Hogan, Bischoff, the rest of the NWO. They close the cage down. They beat the shit out of Savage. This leads to Eric Bischoff karate kick right into a steel chair into Savage's leg, breaking Savage's leg, apparently.
By the way, two of the lamest kicks I've ever seen in my life. It was just like a little. It looked like if Chuck Norris tried to teach a 4-year-old how to do a roundhouse kick.
Yeah, it was not very good. And Bischoff actually, is a black belt. Does know it. It just did not look good. The crowd is chanting Goldberg. So the Goldberg chants, Kyle. I don't know whether it was. We kind of alluded to it the last couple of weeks that we think these promos with the Goldberg chants are a way to kind of get the crowd to start, chanting Goldberg. So you hear the chants for Goldberg during that cage match replay. They do show Kevin Nash. He runs to the back. They kind of cut to some slow motion footage to let you know that Vincent took out the technician. Savage is going to raise the cage, and that kind of ends the replay there. And finally, after all of that, promos and replays, we move to our opening bout, the curtain jerker, if you will, Kyle. Mike Enos wrestling Steve McMichael in his return to the ring. And this is where we'll see our second sign of the night. One of those fans that brings a marker board that they can, change the message throughout the day. Here it says, Hogan fears my sack. So at least Philly, had some decent signs here.
And 98 was just all about the fear.
They really were about the fear. Couple things about this match itself. Well, I should say not about the match, just about the stuff around the match. Did you notice the mat was different, like a different color?
It felt like it was more dark and gray.
Yeah, it was like dark and yeah, you're right. Like the mat was dark and gray, and it almost looked felt or something. Like it looked like it had like a style to it or something like that. But it was definitely darker. And the referee was darker. Where did this guy come from?
I love that segue. Oh my god! All right. Hold on. I gotta get back. All I put in my notes is who's the new ref.
I do not have any recollection of this guy.
No, I tried looking it up. I was like WCW referee, and all I kept getting was Teddy Long. Like, what's not Teddy Long?
Right. It is not Teddy Long. I have no idea who this guy is, and I don't remember him ever refereeing again.
He looked like if Norman Smiley was 10 years younger.
Yeah, I could see that. But yeah, I don't know. It made me laugh. I'm like, I have no idea who this guy is. But those are the two highlights of the match, I guess, between Enos and Steve Mongo McMichael is the referee and the mat. Enos does try telling the story of continuing to work that arm, that wrist. That was what Mongo McMichael broke. And, of course, the commentary team trying to sell us on McMichael never missing a snap in the NFL or never missing a game. And here he is forced not to wrestle because of this injury. But he's back. Enos is going to work that. Eventually, you're going to get a 3-point stance. He's going to go for the tombstone, but it's going to get reversed. And then he's going to do a spinning tombstone, 30 seconds later. He holds up the 4 Horsemen sign. I give this a 1 3/4. It was pretty sloppy and uneventful.
I also gave it a 1 3/4, and I think we already said I like the story that was being told at the start with Enos working on the wrist. That really was the only thing that was of any considerable, I guess, tip of the cap. You could tell Mongo has some ring rust, which is really not saying much considering that it's about what he looks like.
It is ring rust, but it is also Mongo, so take it with a grain of salt.
Right. I also liked how Mongo took a sign from the crowd and tried to like show it off.
Tried to hold off, and it was something about Karl Malone or something. Or
I think the front. I think the front was a Horseman sign.
I think it was too. But yeah,
but he wasn't. Yeah, he didn't have it on the hard camera, so all the hard camera said was Rodman is the real Horseman.
Yeah, that was pretty great. After this match, we're going to hear a second replay of the night. And this is sort of a new thing Thunder's doing, I guess, on this episode, and they do it throughout the rest of the show, is they show these replays now, but like on the left side of the screen, you get like a Thunder graphic, and then it kind of cuts off, and it's like a split screen almost. You get the Thunder graphic on the left, and then the right is the replay. And this one is Hogan. I think we've seen this replay previously, but it's Hogan daring anyone to come after him now that he's got Rodzilla on his side.
I hated this because this was the exact same shit from last week. We saw this stuff.
That's what I'm saying. We've seen the same exact fucking replay. So I don't know what this is all about. We are going to get a WCW Saturday Night promo. And by that, I mean they show the graphic and they're not even trying anymore. And they let us know that DDP, Van Hammer, and Eddie Guerrero will be in attendance. So,
but once again, like maybe they're just in the crowd. We don't know what they're doing. They're the tea party.
They are there, apparently, but that's it. After this, Raven's going to come out with basically the entire flock to cut a promo here. And he says, basically, there's this malignant tumor in the flock, and he's, that's what he's referring to as Saturn, as he kind of basically says he kicked Saturn out of the flock now, which is funny because I don't think Saturn wanted anything to do with the flock. But here we are. And then he says something to Reese about, you are going to win me the U.S. title tonight. So, Kyle, we now know Goldberg is number one contender is Reese. And Raven says this to him. Reese goes, and then leaves the ring and just walks away.
He's like, go out there and get me that belt. Like, he's not going to run to the back and go like, here, I found it, boss.
Right. And he just leaves, and they just keep cutting a promo. I feel like this is like the maybe third time now, where Raven has done something where he's like started a promo out with like one thing, and the guy's just like, yeah, okay, or yes, or whatever, and then leaves, and then he just pivots to another part of the promo. And it's just weird. It's just very weird they structure this way.
It's almost like it's almost like he had to remind himself, or he realized magically that Reese was in the ring. He's like, what are you doing here? Go get that title.
Right? So then Raven kind of goes on and says, he supported Saturn. He loaned him money when they were younger. He'd help Saturn with, having the flock accompany Saturn to the ring. And now he says that he can't forgive him. Saturn broke his heart. And this leads to Saturn coming out, says that he's on his own. He then gets attacked by Raven and the rest of the flock, which leads to Kanyon coming in for the save, kind of evens the score. Eventually, Saturn and Kanyon are back-to-back and then face-to-face, but it kind of ends that way. I guess this is a time to let you know that Kanyon does win that match with Saturn at Great American Bash. I forget exactly how it ends right now. It's not really important, but it looks now like Kanyon and Saturn are kind of my enemy, an enemy of my, enemy of my enemy is my friend.
The enemy of my enemy is a friend.
Yeah, so looks like they're kind of both against Raven. At this point, we see that Goldberg video package that we've seen previously, and we get back from it to let us know, of course, now that we know that he's wrestling Reese, the question is asked is if he could lift Reese up for that jackhammer. I'm pretty sure he's already done that.
He did, and we've seen it as a highlight on Thunder. He did it during his match against Raven for the U.S. title.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So he's already done it.
At this point, before our next match starts up, we're going to get our third sign of the night, and it says La Parka is da bomb. So
I miss La Parka. I feel like we haven't seen him in a few weeks.
It's been a little bit, yeah. But thankfully, Kyle, we do get to see Brad Armstrong, who I know you haven't seen in a few weeks. He'll be wrestling Fit Finlay. Of course, Fit Finlay no longer the television champion, as he lost that title to Booker T, of course, who Booker T was able to win the best of 7 match and then the television title. And the highlight of this match is when security goes to the hard camera side where the crowd is in the front row and takes something from the crowd. I don't know what the object was. I tried rewinding a few times. I could not make it out. But he gets booed heavily for taking it away. I don't know if it was a beach ball or some toy or something like that. that shows you how invested I was in the match, as well as the crowd. There is a comment at one point where Heenan says he had a little Irish in him, which got Shivani to crack up. And
there was also a spot where Tenay said that Fit Finlay and Brett Armstrong are two of the very best in our sport. Which I'm like, you know what, Tenay, I appreciate you trying to Tony this up, but
Right.
You know better.
On top of this match already not being good, Fit Finlay really slows it down. He puts in a chin lock for a while. He talks to the fans. And eventually he's going to hit that tombstone pile driver, the same finisher we saw at the last match to win this one. I gave this a star to 3/4. It was slow, and also that's poor form to have the same finisher on back-to-back matches.
Star and a half. I said the exact same thing. Uneventful, uninteresting. It was slow. I couldn't stand that. A lot of this match was just Fit Finlay putting Armstrong into a chin lock, then a headlock, then the nerve pinch shoulder massage of death. The crowd was chanting "boring" a bunch, and then two tombstones. That's unforgivable.
Yeah, it's really bad. I mean, it's not quite the level of like.
Those are the only two guys that have that move.
Right. Oh yeah, you don't do that, especially you don't do it back to back. But it's the only thing worse than that is like if everybody was super kicking as a non-finisher early on, and then like in the main event, you got Shawn Michaels and the super kick is his finisher. Like it's not quite that level of bad, but it's not good to have the same finisher in back-to-back matches.
So you're saying like if back in like '95 they did like a pay-per-view in the island of Samoa and it was all a bunch of wild like Samoans wrestling each other, and then afterwards it was Shawn Michaels fighting somebody.
Yeah, that's
where
how
everybody
I feel about
does
it.
the super kick.
Though I guess you could always say that Shawn Michaels is the master of the super kick, which is why he's a good finisher. But I always thought that was a little weak there. But this was bad. Tombstones in back-to-back matches. I feel like agents were not talking. Needless to say, this was not planned out well. After this match, we're going to get our third replay of the night. This is another clip of Rodman basically saying that the crowd must love him. I believe they were in Detroit at this point. Of course, Rodman, a former Piston, which doesn't make any sense for him to try and get the crowd on his side when he is literally tag teaming with who is supposed to be the most heavily booed heel in the business. But
I didn't mind it because he kind of made it seem like, hey, I won you guys a championship. You guys have to like me.
It might be, and that might be what he was going with. But the crowd seemed to cheer him on.
Be okay with it. Yeah, they actually cheered him on. Yeah.
But I do think that was kind of where they were going with it.
Yeah. Never underestimate civic pride.
Right. After this, we're gonna get Disco Inferno. He's gonna come out. Before he starts his match, though, he's going to walk over to the headset. He's going to grab Tenay's headset off his head, and he's going to tell him to let him know that you guys should start calling him the new icon. It's weird because I feel like they've been calling Piper the icon, and Disco Inferno has literally nothing to do with Roddy Piper, so why is he calling himself the new icon now?
I have no idea. I thought Sting was the icon.
I think he becomes the icon later on.
Oh, damn. There's too much of this.
So
I think Shawn Michaels is the icon.
Shawn Michaels is the icon, right, yeah.
Damn, it's just too many.
Out comes Smokey the Giant, as Heenan calls him.
That's how I wrote it, yeah.
This, of course, is like Giant's new gimmick where he smokes on his way to the match. And it's funny, so we don't have a lot of a good show to talk about, so I want to use this to kind of get off topic for a minute, Kyle, if I may. But there was recently an 83 Weeks podcast with Bischoff and Conrad where they cover the Giants' time in WCW, and they talk about the smoking period. And it was like, I guess Giant or Paul White was a big smoker, like just chain smoked all the time in the back. So Bischoff thought it might be a good gimmick here, and it also kind of like he thought it might be a way to give him like he doesn't give a fuck. He's just going to come out here and, destroy his opponent. He's taking it so not seriously that he's just smoking a cigarette, the Jay Cutler, don't care kind of thing. But Bischoff goes on, this is the conversation I want to have with you. Bischoff goes on to basically, he liked the Giant, and, he said he wasn't totally, it didn't really hurt him. He said when he left for WWF. And he said it was just one of those things that, like, he wasn't sure. They tried so many different things with his character, and he's like, it just never really went anywhere. He had his moments, but he's like, these gimmicks just floundered. And he said, we talk about what a great talent he was and how long he's been in the business, and he goes, he's a great guy, but like, can you name, when you talk about him as, whether it's the Giant or the Big Show or Paul White, whatever you want to refer to him as, do you have like a match you're like, oh God, this was like, there's always like any wrestler right now, if I said, oh, Undertaker, you're like, oh, I can give you 5 great Undertaker matches. Can you do that with the Big Show or the Giant, that there's just matches that you're like, these were great matches that he was in?
I feel like the only matches that I remember or I can really like sit back are like the more gimmicky the match, the more I would remember the Giant being in it or
But you don't remember for like, okay, so like what the he was in
Halloween Havoc 95 I think of with him, but once again it's a horrible match.
Right.
But I know that he is iconically in it because he was dropped from the top of a damn building and died and came back to life.
Right, but you don't remember that for being a good match.
No, I don't.
You don't he was a sumo wrestler at WrestleMania. Like that wasn't a good match. Like don't get me wrong.
I
always
feel
thought
like the reason why he's never had a great match or something that we can remember from a storyline is because that dude always bounced back and forth between being a heel and a face so much.
Well, this might be why. This is exactly what Bischoff was saying. Like Bischoff's like, we never knew what to do with this character, and it looked like Vince was kind of the same way because they do. You're right. He goes. We always it's kind of become a long ongoing joke about the face in heel turns that he goes through, but. I don't know. I started thinking about it. Like I never thought about. Like always thought, he's a great talent, but I don't think I could think of a match right now that I'd be like, that was a great match that the Big Show was in.
Now, can you think of? Let me ask you this: take away, and I know it's a hard takeaway. Take away Andre the Giant versus Hogan, where he gets body slammed and loses.
I mean, that's a pretty big takeaway.
I get that, but once again, hear me out. If he doesn't have that match, or that match just ends up just being just a match, doesn't become the immovable object versus the unstoppable force, body slamming the Giant, at the Pontiac Silverdome, brother. Do we say the same thing? Did anyone say too much about looking back and, oh my God, look at all these iconic matches of Andre the Giant? And once again, but what I'm trying to get at is that the big reason why big men have a hard time having iconic matches is because when they are heels, it's hard for a big, strong man to be either of those things consistently, which is why the Big Show was always going back and forth. You can't. It's really hard to have a big, huge guy being a face because you got to have something to feel sorry for the guy. You got to have something where we're all supposed to rally behind this gigantic, strong, like unstoppable person. Like, how can you feel bad? How can you have pity for a guy that literally could just bulldoze everybody and it just seems like an invincible person? But at the same time, how can you have that guy who doesn't need to cheat and a guy who is just like an overbearing force also be booed because of his just natural structure? He's big guys have always been gimmicks just by definition, and it's hard for them to branch out of that. Which is, once again, I think the reason why it's hard for us to find like an iconic match, because I don't think he's really had he's never really held a storyline or something that had an impact towards the business, because he was always like, all right, we have nothing else. This is at least going to sell tickets. Let's just put Giant in this or the Big Show in this match, and people will enjoy it because of just he's a spectacle. He's the 9th or 10th or 11th or whatever the hell it is, wonder of the world.
I mean. And I understand everything you're saying, but you would think in a 25-year-plus career, there would be a few matches that would stick out like, this was a pretty good match. But, I can't just think of any.
He is like a trump card that if anything were to ever happen, someone gets injured, someone gets suspended, somebody leaves for another company, the Giant is always going to draw a little bit just because of the fact that you could just say, can this person overcome this, this gigantic of a man? Or if he's a face, can this big man, take on the entire NWO and bring the glory back to WCW on his broad shoulders? Like, they could do that for a short period of time, but after a while that fizzles so quickly because it's hard to, once again, to either boo the man for very long, and it's also hard to back up and cheer the man for very long because I don't have any reason to either like be proud of him or at the same time like think he's a dick because he's just huge.
Right.
That's his gimmick. He's gigantic.
That is actually his name, in fact, here. But that was a little digression. We'll get back to the match. Before it starts, Disco's going to cut a quick promo that says they came here to see him dance. Which
what we just talked about was 5 times longer than the match.
That's true. Disco, of course, says you shouldn't be smoking. It'll stunt your growth, which, of course, is a joke because he's the giant.
Then
the Disco Inferno is going to take one hell of a clothesline. Then he's going to get a kick to the face and a great choke slam.
Oh, God, yeah.
Fantastic choke slam. Easy squash match. This is actually, he's going to get his cigarette back from Vincent, starts smoking it before he pins Disco with his foot. I gave it 2 stars because, I mean, it was a quick squash match, but it was a good squash match.
Yeah, I gave it. I almost didn't rate this. I would have been okay if you said, "Hey, let's not even rate this." It's. I think it's more of pushing the whole. The Giant is so powerful and so dominating that he could just come to the ring, smoke a cigarette, level somebody for 15 seconds, and win, and it's like it's nothing. Which I do like that premise that he can effortlessly beat anybody. I'm not saying that the Disco Inferno is anybody fantastic, but no, I liked what they were trying to get at. I also felt like this was kind of like I felt like they were testing the waters of, okay, well, if this is actually going to work out, if this is something that we can do and get away with, how about when Scott Hall comes back, we'll do a drinking angle with him? That won't be bad, right?
Yeah, right. They do quip as this match is ending that the Giant made an ash out of Disco Inferno, which is a nice one-liner. Then we move into Tony Schiavone out by the entrance ramp interviewing Dean Malenko. Dean's going to come out wearing jeans and a Tommy Hilfiger shirt tucked into his jeans.
I couldn't unsee. I was so distracted by how red his shirt was.
It was very red. Dean's going to basically cut this promo on Jericho and says, you whined and got what you wanted, Jericho. The belt doesn't make the wrestler makes the belt. Jericho, I guess, is awarded the title. It was kind of left up in the air after Bash in the Beach. Jericho makes a comment about Dean's dead father, which Dean snaps, and I think he hits him with the chair and gets disqualified. But because the title was up in the air and the winner is supposed to get the title, they must have given it to Jericho, so Jericho won the title via disqualification, but I'm not exactly sure if Jericho's actually the champ or not.
I think he is.
Based on this promo, it seems like that's the case. Basically, then Dean kind of ends this by saying, you're going to wish that I had stayed at home when I said I was quitting. And that's your promo there. We'll move into our next match as Chono and Tenzan of the NWO Japan.
Remember that? Remember that stable?
Yeah, right? They're going to be wrestling British Bulldog and Jim the Anvil Neidhart, and the IWGP Tag Team Championship is on the line, Kyle, because anytime there's a champ on the card, whether it is a WCW champ or in this case, a New Japan titles.
It's IWGP, not New Japan.
Whatever it is. They got to defend the titles. So the belts are on the line. Not much to say about this match either. At the beginning, it was kind of a decent tag team match where they were, the heels, NWO, were trying to do the normal heel work where they, double team one guy in the corner and then occasionally get the other guy's partner to come into the ring, which distracts the ref, and then they keep working on it. Quote of probably the night in the last couple weeks was when Bobby Heenan makes a comment about Stu Hart was able to basically pawn off his ugly daughters to Jim and Davey Boy here, which got me a nice chuckle.
Which Tony was like stop it. He was like mad. Like, yeah, why would you even say that? Loved it though. This is
where he also makes the beef stew comment about Stu Hart. One thing you always count on, Heenan hates Hogan, and he can always rip on the Hart family.
Did you also notice that during the match, there were some USA chants, which I always love when the people who are wrestling, one's a Brit and the other one is associated with Canadian wrestling, right, like royalty.
Fans are stupid. These Philly fans weren't that great either. British Bulldog's eventually going to do his running power slam, and you think maybe we're going to have new IWGP champs. But they're going to break it up. I don't remember which one broke it up.
Shona.
Tenzan. Did Shona break
did.
it up?
Yeah.
But instead of just breaking it up, because he was right there to break it up, he breaks it up with the belt. This is going to end in disqualification. This lets him keep their titles. I gave it 2 stars because it was an okay tag team match, and it made sense that the belts weren't going to change hands, so it was fine.
I gave it a 1 3/4 stars. Maybe a little too slow and stiff for my liking. Not much pop-worthy offense. I don't think the crowd was really into it. And really, there was no offense by Bulldog or Jim other than the running power slam and maybe the initial house clean that they did at the start. The only other thing I had on here that I thought was worth mentioning, not really as much, but we're mentioning. So the IWGP tag titles are on the line here, right? Can we just real quick just talk about how much of an afterthought any type of tag title in this company really is? I understand that we just recently got out of
our main event at Great American Bash was the Giant versus Sting for the rights to the tag team titles, which by the way,
a singles match,
which by the way, Sting won, and was also one of the worst matches I've seen in a long time. It was bad.
It was a bad match. It's so bad that we no longer have like. I just miss the days where tag teams were people who were able to have the tag titles, where you really legitimately
like
had
Heat,
guys,
American Males,
or like right now, or even the current like WWE. I think that's a really. I think the tag division has been as strong as it's ever been right now.
Now in 2018, yes,
in 2018, yes. But it's just like it's crazy that like not only are the current WCW tag belts an afterthought, because the last time we even had a tag title match that was worth watching was Giant and Sting beating the Outsiders. That was, I think, the last time that we saw Scott Hall, unless he showed up on the next Nitro just to be there. And then after that, we had no tag title defenses other than that fake one with Giant and Bryan Adams. Then you have a singles title or singles match for the tag titles. Then we ship over one of the Japanese federations for their tag titles that aren't going to change hands on goddamn Thunder. Like I feel like what a horrible time in the business. Both WWF and WCW did not handle tag titles very well in the late 90s.
No, they did not. And after this match, we'll get our 4th replay of the night. It's Hogan and Rodzilla setting off the pyro, which, again, I think we've seen this a couple of times already, but what the hell. After this, Tony Schiavone going to be interviewing Ravishing Rick Rude, who he lets us know is part of NWO Hollywood, Kyle. Wait, what? I thought he was part of NWO Wolfpack with Kurt Hennig.
They turned their back on the Wolfpack, and the song explicitly says you're not supposed to do that.
Such things. Of course, you and I kind of saw this, the writing on the wall, so to speak, with the way Hennig was discussing things with Conan last week with his match against Goldberg. So Rick Rude's going to get on the microphone and say that Goldberg blew Conan away, which is true. It was another garbage match on a very garbage pay-per-view. Lets us know that Kurt Hennig is busy training in Minnesota with Brad Riggins. This leads to some Goldberg chants in the crowd. And Rick Rude says Goldberg, he softened up. At one point, he used to be a hard worker. Now he's hopping out of a limo to do autograph sessions while he's shaking hands and kissing babies. Kurt is focused, and Rude's going to be in his corner when those two wrestle. So
here's two things about that. One, isn't this the exact opposite of what Luger just said at the beginning of the goddamn show? That like Hogan was the guy that's like, now being the corporate guy or being like not the guy who's working hard in the gym, and
right.
Goldberg's the one.
Goldberg was, and here's Rude.
And now Rude's saying the exact opposite. Like Goldberg's out there just being a corporate champion and doing signings and all this other stuff, while Hennig is working out in the gym. Like I don't know what side anyone's picking, but everyone's riding that fence. And the other thing that I thought was funny was this is clearly one of the times that the Goldberg chants were edited in. They were canned in, because one thing I know about Rick Rude, did know about Rick Rude, rest in peace, was that he knows how to play the crowd. And if they were really chanting that hard for Goldberg, he would have stopped talking, Let them do it. Let Goldberg get that moment where it makes him stop. Let it breathe for a moment. But you could tell that it didn't actually happen because Rick Rude's talking right over it, and then all of a sudden the chants just cut out. They don't die down. They don't start to sputter out. Someone just turned it off.
Yeah. I wish somebody turned off the production of this entire show, Kyle. But we move on to this next match.
Yes, we're trudging along.
It's Alex Wright. It's Conan.
It's the match we all deserve.
That's right. And there's a lot of Tenay pissed off that or actually, first of all, Brain is trying to find out about this press conference that's taking place on Monday. Or we're going to see this whole press conference that happened with Malone and Rodman and everybody. And Brain's friend apparently isn't giving him any updates and said tune into Nitro on Monday, which is kind of a dick move from a friend. But he does say Lee Marshall's walking his parrot tonight, so that's where Lee's at tonight. So it's nice for Bobby to update us on that. As for this match, not a whole lot to talk about. I will say that the one spot that Conan does frequently throughout his matches, where he does that like somersault clothesline, I always thought that was an entertaining move.
It looks good when I feel like it really depends on where the opponent is when he finally gets up to do the clothesline. This one was done well, and one thing I'll always give we can dog Alex Wright all we want. Dude's a pretty decent worker. Guy's a good seller for moves, and overall just a pretty athletic guy. And also, Alex Wright had probably one of the longest entrances of the night. They let Alex Wright have his full entrance today, the whole dancing down the entranceway. That dude had a longer entrance than I think anybody tonight. Maybe even Goldberg. I didn't count it, but I feel like Alex Wright held the record today for the longest intro from beginning to end.
Yeah, and he's going to dominate early on in this match. Eventually, Conan's going to take control, but this is going to lead to Rick Rude getting on the microphone and calls him basically a Mexican hairless, which then, of course, lets Alex Wright regain control of the match. But Rude then leaves because you don't see him anymore. Wright is actually at one point going to body slam Conan, and it looks like he struggles lifting him up. And I swear I saw this a few times during the match. Like, it looked like he wasn't expecting Conan to be as fat as Conan is here.
Well, I think this Conan, I mean, no matter how big you are, you can always help somebody get up. Like, and I think just Conan would just dead weighted it hard on him.
At some point, there's a weird roll-up, and you get a 1-2, and then it looks like Conan's kicking out, and there's the 3 count. I realized Conan was actually the one holding the 3 count on Alex Wright, and he lifted his shoulder at 2 just to let you know that he's not going to be pinned. He's your winner. This was a bizarre ending. Commentary team had to discuss it and let you know what you just saw because the angle was bad. I'm not opposed to out of nowhere roll-ups because I think that's kind of neat, but it just felt weird here. It was a weird roll-up to begin with. This match was awkward and slow, and it was a star and 3/4 for me.
This is actually really weird. I feel like you just plagiarized what I just wrote. I gave it a star and 3/4. I put down some sloppiness. At this point, I come to expect that from a Conan match. So I think I think slowly but surely, I think I have to not score that against him because I think just sometimes he's just kind of how he is. He's just a little awkward. I put down, I'm okay with out of nowhere pins, but the crowd was not feeling it, and it did not even look like a pinfall attempt if you first saw it, nor were we even sure who was pinning who. I thought Rude coming out was kind of pointless. He shows up to say some shit, then he just leaves. My favorite was Tenay and Tony trying to explain the pin to all of us. If you really have to go into that much detail about how Conan pulled it off, it's a bad ending.
It's almost like we were in sync this week because that's actually pretty much what I've got written down here, and we pretty much saw the same thing, which leads me to believe we're not alone in that thought.
Right.
After this, we'll get our 5th replay of the night. This is where DDP was attacked by chairs before he announced if he was going to be part of the Wolfpack or not.
And then had to fight Macho Man later in order to prove that he can join the Wolfpack.
Right.
Okay.
We're going to get our 6th replay of the night at this point. This is from Nitro on June 8th, which is where Hogan was daring everyone to attack him now that he's got Rodzilla on his team. If this sounds familiar, it's because we've seen it 17 fucking times already. And then Hogan says something about getting hit with a lightning bolt. Then they show us the old pyro from Rodman again, which of course we just saw like 5 minutes ago. And then the chair shots of DDP, which we literally just saw seconds prior to this. So it's glad to see that they're just showing us all the replays from the replays we saw earlier in the night, and which are all the same replays we saw from the week before in Thunder. God, these even like I'm not opposed to replays, but like not the same fucking replays over and over.
Well, not only were they the same replays that we've already seen tonight, they were the same replays we already saw last week. Like,
exactly.
did nothing happen on Nitro this week?
And we had a pay-per-view, but apparently nobody cares about that.
Nope. Or once again, like I said, the follow-up Nitro to the Bash. You would think there'd be something on that show worth recapping for Thunder, and really the only thing that they showed was the cage match, right? That's it.
Yeah, I think you're right. We're then going to get what I'm going to call Match of the Night, Kyle, and it's not saying
by default.
Much. It is Eddie Guerrero, it is Chris Benoit, so when I saw that, I was at least like, okay, this is, it's got a chance to be good. Eddie Guerrero's going to come out, he looks dejected, he just, he doesn't want the camera in his face, he looks pretty upset. Of course, he lost to Chavo at Great American Bash, which is kind of story here. This match is quick, but it's high. It's kind of high impact, quick action. This Chris Benoit is gonna get two German suplexes. He's gonna go for the flying headbutt, but it's gonna miss. This is gonna lead to Eddie Guerrero, who's going to miss the frog splash, and then soon after, Eddie's gonna lock on the sleeper on Benoit, but he's gonna reverse it into the crossface. He's going to win this match with the crossface. I gave it 2.25 stars. It is our match of the night. I know these two can have a much better match than they did, but they didn't have a lot of time. And, it was fine for what it was. And next to everything else we saw tonight, it was a welcome, it was definitely a welcome surprise.
I gave this 2.5 stars, and once again, I probably agree more. If this was a good card, this would be a 2.25, just because we know what their ceiling is. But when you're surrounded by shit, you gotta give the high five when you finally see a match that's half decent. So I gave it 2.5. I agree, rather quick match, but once again, good match chemistry comes a long way in having a good match. That was what was really lacking in almost every single match that we've seen so far today, or as far as this episode is concerned. They were both pretty even in terms of offense. They kind of took turns doing their attacks, because I understand that Eddie Guerrero is a heel, but I feel like he doesn't wrestle like a heel. He acts like one, but when he's wrestling, he might like be a heel to the crowd, but for the most part, he wrestles not like a guy who would carry a match like a heel would. You know what I mean?
I mean, sometimes he does heel-like tactics where he, tells the ref, hey, he's pulling my hair,
sure. Yeah,
or he grabs the ropes, that kind of thing he'll do.
But not like one that would usually, I guess, dictate the pace. Usually he's in matches where it's usually pretty back and forth.
Right. Because he's not like a Flair heel in that regard.
Well, he's also does a lot of lucha libre, cruiserweight type matches where that's kind of what happens. Everybody kind of gets their licks in. But once again, not too much excitement drawn from the crowd for this match, other than the crowd kind of being against Eddie. I think there was a rogue beach ball at this point dancing around the crowd. A lot of Eddie sucks. I think we got a "We Want Flair" chants going. So the crowd was alive and well, but not really so much for the match in particular.
And after the match, Chavo's going to come out. He's going to bark like a dog to Penzer. He's going to get on the microphone and says, "Come on, Eddie, you're a trooper. You're a Guerrero." And then he starts to unload a bunch of cliches, including every dog has its day, unless you're the dog that gets hit by a truck crossing the street. This is going to lead to Eddie, says that, the family is happy that, Chavo's not with him anymore. And then he kind of walks off, which is going to lead to Chavo to say, keep your head up still. You're still my favorite wrestler. Still kind of playing that, Chavo's crazy and Eddie just is kind of over it all and not sure how to handle Chavo these days. And then, Kyle, we are blessed because it's Philly, of course, home of Extreme Championship Wrestling. No better time than now to do a South Philly street fight with Philly's own former ECW tag team, Public Enemy. They're going to be wrestling Sick Boy and Riggs.
And by the way, this is the South Philadelphia street fight, not like the people up in North. The North Philadelphians are pussies.
That's right. The South Philly, we do it with wheelbarrows and aluminum trash cans and lids, and of course the toilet seat.
Picture frames with a flap.
Yeah, picture frames with a flap, which might be the best part of this match, was that quote. Lodi, of course, is going to be involved as well as a distraction from time to time. Probably the best spot of the match is when they put him in the wheelbarrow and they go to throw him run him and throw him really hard in the guardrail, and the camera cuts to the ring just before a contact is made. So beautiful production work there again, WCW. Riggs pretty much wears the toilet seat as a necklace the entire match, and the match is basically them taking aluminum cans and lids and hitting each other with in sheets, basically aluminum materials to the head, back and forth the entire match.
They look like foil pans for the most
pretty
part.
Much, yeah. Ultimately, they're going to do the drive-by kind of senton splash through 2 tables. That's going to do it. I gave it a 1.75 because the table spot looked good with the double-decker tables on the outside. It was a clean break through both tables. The match otherwise was crap, and I guess this was just a way to appease the fans and get some ECW chants going, because otherwise, why are they even showing this match?
I gave this 1 star. This match did not need to exist. This was 100% pandering. The match had I understand that I'm okay with chaos if it's controlled chaos. And if you're going to hit people,
voltage wasn't in this match, dude.
No, they were not high voltage. I wish they were. But even Kenny Chaos couldn't save us from this. I think there was a spot where Rocco Rock uses barbecue tongs on the dick and balls of Sick Boy. The commentary team was just corpsing it throughout this entire match. They couldn't make heads or tails of what to even talk about. They were just laughing their asses off the entire time. These are people that are being like maimed and beaten to a pulp, and they're just laughing like it's the most hilarious thing in the world.
Joke. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, if you really look at it, that is the inherent problem with this match, is that if we're going to have a Chicago-style street fight, there should be some roughness to it.
You should want to be beating the fuck out of your opponent, and there should be some reason that you're fighting them. You're using weapons. You want to hurt them. You want to physically harm your opponent, and it's not that way at all. It's just a fucking random dudes. There's not a single spot where anybody, either in the crowd, in the commentary booth, the ref reacting. By the way, did you not notice the part where Rocco Rock throws a chair in the ring and Mark Curtis dodges that shit like the Matrix? No, I missed that, actually.
Oh, dude, yeah. Rocco, when he got thrown over that guardrail from the wheelbarrow, in the stunt there, he actually took a chair from the outside. It was that red chair. They're like those front line seats that you can sit in. He threw it into the ring, and Mark Curtis's last ditch moment saw that it was coming over his head, and that dude just spun backwards and dodged that shit right before it nailed him in the back of the head. So to me, that was the highlight of it. The whole table spot, I would have rated this higher if they botched it, just because I'm like, you know what, it would just come full circle if everything was just fucking horrible with this match. I would have given it a higher, but once again, yeah, the spot was fine. Everything else about this match had no redeeming qualities other than Mark Curtis dodging a chair.
Can't argue that. And moving on, after the match, we get I think it's the same Goldberg promo we saw earlier. It might be different, but it's all the same concept. It's got the Goldberg chants in the background.
When Goldberg is in slow motion, I feel like Goldberg. I don't like Goldberg in slow motion. Or as far as I'm okay with his moves.
It doesn't do him much justice.
No, his facial expressions in slow motion, it doesn't look good.
Well, he's going to get a chance to show how strong he is in the main event, Kyle. We got Goldberg defending the United States title against Reese. The Goldberg chants are in full effect. Heenan says, "B.O.G., beware of Goldberg." At this point, we're going to get our 4th sign of the night. It says Goldberg fears bees, which just made me laugh. And Tony Schiavone is going to point out that he says Goldberg never cuts promos. The fans only like him for his in-ring work, which I guess is true. Consider me one of those people who doesn't like him for his in-ring work, but that's another point. But as this match is getting ready to get started, Horace Hogan's going to come in and
it's Horace Boulder.
Excuse me, Horace Boulder.
Hey, nobody. You heard none of that. Okay.
Sorry about that. He's going to try and stop Goldberg by hitting him with the stop sign.
Loved it.
Tenay with a great pun there. Goldberg's basically going to punch the sign back into Horace's face.
It's very DDP of him.
Reese is going to suplex Goldberg with a big old suplex that, of course, Goldberg's going to immediately get up from, like Ultimate Warrior, no selling there. Spear, and believe it or not, he was, in fact, able to get Reese up for the jackhammer. Star and 3/4. The fans were totally into this match. As you can imagine, it was a big Goldberg squash. But, Kyle, we're kind of another clean win now.
Are we starting a new streak, perhaps?
And we might be. I gave it a star and 3/4. What did you think about the match?
Star and 3/4, standard Goldberg squash, 101-0. And once again, we get a legit main event victory. So not much else to say other than the fact that Goldberg took a stop sign to the head that basically comatose DDP about 2 months ago on MTV Live. But yet Goldberg basically just brushes that shit off.
He sure did. But, maybe it's just who's using the stop sign could be part of the power behind it. So Raven might have more power than Horace, hitting that sign.
I mean, if you look at it if you're using the eye test, I feel like that does not work. And wasn't Horace the one that actually hit DDP with the stop sign that caused Raven to win the title?
Oh, yes. In that regard, yes. But that was after he took a lot more of a beating too.
All right, go ahead and try and explain this shit. That's fine.
That said, Thunder is over. Thank God. What did you think about this show?
Shockingly, everybody, I thought this show was pretty shit. No real story development. The matches were subpar for the most part. Anything that might have made you ask, I wonder why this was a thing, was never explained. There's a lot of things that I feel like I didn't know what happened on last night's show outside of Eric Bischoff karate kicking Macho Man's knee to oblivion, apparently. It's a bad night when the chain-smoking giant choke-slam squashing disco is the second best match on the card. I think you and I agree. I think we both rated that either tied for second or fair. Second. We had one pretty worthless promo in the ring with Conan and Luger. You had Raven making the most out of his time on the show, furthering his storyline with one of the 5 people it feels like he's feuding with. I think he just throws a dart at 5 pictures and whatever it is, that's who he's going to talk about that week. And now he's added Saturn to that list. Dean Malenko with his goddamn red shirt and stating a lot of the obvious. I didn't like the fact that he had a promo, but yet Jericho wasn't on the show to retort. I feel like that would have brought the entertainment level way higher in this if Jericho was on the show. And on top of that, there really was no star power at all on the show. And I understand that Luger's a big name, Giant's a big name, but that's it. I mean, that's really it. And they're both part of non-consequential parts of the show. It's even worse to me on the white and black side, where outside of the Giant, it's being represented by a retired mustache and suspenders in Rick Rude and 2 guys from NWO Japan. So the recaps were totally unforgivable because they were 2 weeks old. And I understand that there's a press conference coming up next week with those 4 guys, with the Rodman Karl Malone storyline. But that whole thing of them replaying these took way too much TV time, which then tells you how bad the show was if they had to cover it with all that rehashed and replayed promos for Goldberg and everything else.
Yeah, this as we alluded to from the beginning, this was a bad Thunder. You pretty much said it all. The star power was severely lacking. We just had a pay-per-view 4 days prior to this. You almost have to infer on what happened on that pay-per-view because they really don't tell you. You kind of know Goldberg. You know that Goldberg's still the champ. You know that Jericho won the title, but you really don't know how any of these matches played out. And
Booker T, wins the TV title, and yet
but you don't even know that here. You just know Fit Finley's. Well, I guess you just know Fit Finley's not. I guess you could figure it out based
Chris
on
Benoit's on the show.
Yeah, Benoit's on the show without a title, and Fit Finley doesn't have a title. So yeah, Booker T won it. But overall, to your point, we saw recaps of recaps from shows that were not recent. And it was mostly letting us know that Rodman and Karl Malone are ready to, go at it in a tag team match. This was a bad Thunder, Kyle, and one of the worst, probably one of the worst, and easily one of the worst we've seen in a couple months. And all I can hope then is that it's not a trend that's going to continue going forward. Because that's our show this week. So if you haven't yet subscribed, we are, of course, on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, wherever you find your listening devices.
iHeartRadio.
On there. Yep. Of course, you can follow us on Twitter at thundercraps.com, where we like to throw out all kinds of tweets throughout the week, try to interact with you guys. Let us know what you thought about the show and everything else. And that said, go check out the June 25th. Actually, might be the 24th because I think it was a Wednesday episode of Thunder. And we will be back here next week to break it down. And, of course, thundercraps.com for all of our previous episodes and social media accounts and all that fun stuff. For Kyle Hogan, I am Josh Kaiser, and we will see you next time on the Thundercraps podcast.
We are desperately out of time. See ya.